Professor Yang Yuan just mentioned, they use everything in the space station to recycle.
Right.
They recycle the water, recycle the action, because you don't want to bring those things to the space to waste those energy.
But I suppose that's what pushes the development as well of science and research to try and make everything more efficient, lighter, smaller.
Exactly. You know that every kilogram of payload, the cost to bring this payload to the station, the cost will be much more expensive than the same amount of gold. So we must save. So just several days before, the media asked me why they don't wash their clothes in outer space. I think that they only use their clothes one time and abandon them, because that washing the clothes will use water. Well, the water is much more expensive than the clothes itself. So that is the reason today we don't use the washing machines in outer space.
So everything that they bring up, it's all just, it's reusable clothes, right? We're not talking about disposable once used in 6 months. It's a long time. That's a lot of clothes to bring up if they have to.
Some are disposable.
Part of the resources are reusable. For instance, the water, the air are reusable. But something like the clothes will not be recycled, and also some other things. And also, that today we use what we call the regenerative environmental control and the life support system. So for this system, we also have some spare parts for these systems, because some of the parts are easy to be have some failure. So we must have the spare parts to replace them. And for this, we must prepare these kinds of parts in the cargo ships.
So space is obviously very limited, or weight, I guess, is limited.
Actually,
what they can carry, but
until today, our water recovery system in the station has already recycled more than 1 ton of water during the Shenzhou-12 and the Shenzhou-13 mission.
So just interrupt quickly, Professor Yang, we're on a 15-minute countdown now.
15 minutes.
各号注
See
意
the，ground staff there.
我是宁浩，15分钟准备，东风，东风明白。
And they're just announcing the 15-minute countdown there. It's the ground crew. Professor Jiang, I read earlier that
15分钟准备，调度制
I'm not sure if it's the Shenzhou-14 or if it's with the Wintian module that's going, but there'll be gyroscopes. And I think you mentioned this earlier as well. Is this going with the Shenzhou? Or is this, because these are 170 kilos?
Yeah, those things are already up there in the Tianhe core module. So those are basically helping the space station turn into propulsion without using the rockets. It's using conservation of angular momentum. Those are heavy spinning disks. In the core module, you can see some bulky sort of round top things, 6 of them on the. You only need 4, but they have redundancies. They are on the outside precisely because they're so noisy, and that's part of going into the mental health for 6 months thing. If there was in the inside, you got constant noise coming from that, it would be a whole different game.
We drive people crazy.
So they've already got everything up there. I think there's no more going up.
So the
gyroscopes, do they have all the gyroscopes they need up there?
Presumably the Wintian would also have them, but they're not on our side anymore.
And also this time we're going to have like 2 modules, Wintian and Mengtian, both for scientific research modules. And what are the differences between them?
The Wintian module also have a very important role to back up many of the critical systems of the core module. For instance, there were also
so it's not only for the scientific.
Yeah, exactly. So the Wintian module have an independent environmental control and life support system. Also, 3 bedrooms for the astronauts.
That will be for the
another
Shenzhou-15, another 3 one at the end of
and also there is another toilet in the Wintian module. So we will have 2 toilets.
So Shenzhou-15's crew will be temporarily stay there.
And also, you already discussed. There have a joke. Miss Jiao Yang, you work for that, because what you discuss is called CMG.
Control moment gyroscope.
Exactly.
But in your case, that was
not China Media Group. So you may notice that just between the small cylindrical compartment and the big cylindrical compartment of the Tianhe module, there are 6 very huge spheres mounted just between them. So that's what you have discussed, the control moment gyroscopes. These are used for the attitude control. The amazing thing is that for this kind of attitude control, you only use electricity. You don't need to use your propellants. So you know that although we also have the attitude control engines on board our Tianhe module, but that only was used in some certain cases. For instance, if you want to change the attitude very rapidly, or when the orbital control engine or the main engines are working, so we need to use the engines. But you should notice that to using engines, we use the valuable propellants. So theoretically speaking, we can have infinite electricity. So we use the control moment gyroscope to control the attitude in most cases. And as you asked, there are also the backup control moment gyroscopes in the Wentian module. So for some critical functions, the Wentian module can increase the reliability of the whole station.
Now we're seeing this, the ground staff is evacuating from the launching pad. That means
they will
counting down. I'm going to
12 minutes.
The commander in charge of this will count the numbers of persons, so no one should be left.
So basically, before 10 minutes is down, no one except for the 3 astronauts will be evacuated.
So as I mentioned, why we opened the third platform in the last sequence, because many of the staff belongs to the Shenzhou spaceship system and belongs to the astronaut system. We will leave last.
Right. And Professor John, aside from this engineering functioning that has been mentioned by Bibi Guang, and I believe the Wentian and Mengtian would have this different role in terms of their scientific research. I believe one will be the home for the bio.
Right,
the bio experiments.
More towards the bio. The Wentian would be more towards biology.
Space biology.
Yeah.
Space biology.
The other one is more physical. Obviously, biology is.
So you'd be more interested in the physical part, right?
Yeah, but I have old admirations for the biologists. I mean, I have friends who raise bacteria. They have to go check it every 3 hours. They can only sleep for 3 hours.
Oh, they're going to raise the bacteria in 10.
I think it's part of this thing. Yeah.
So earlier we saw a sign that said for when the rocket will be ignited, and it was down to the second. It was 10:44:07 seconds.
Yeah.
So they are very precise about this.
That's what I call the zero launch window. But today, because we have the optimized mechanism, so it increased to a narrow launch window. So the launch vehicle can adjust its trajectory during the flight to adapt this, to add the difference. And the next, I believe, at about 10 minutes, T-minus 10 minutes counting down, we will perform some critical operations, for instance, transfer the electricity.
下面通报点火时间，点火时间为10:44分07秒，点火时间为10:44分07秒。
There it is. They're just announcing
That
their
is the final,
precise
their announcement
second.
their announcement for the liftoff time, which will be 10 minutes later.
Professor Zhang has
less
already
than 10
10
minutes
minutes
later.
44, 10
at
10:44:07 seconds.
Professor Zhang has mentioned the basic requirement of the launch is to launch the Shenzhou spaceship to the same orbital plane of our station. They must in the same orbital plane. So we don't have other choice but to when the launch site together with the rotation of the Earth passing through this orbital plane. So that is the reason.
So we've got a few more minutes to go until launch, and we'll get to see all the different phases in a minute. But just before we get there, Professor Zhang, can you just talk us through what will happen after the rocket launches? So the different stages of separation, probably not using the right term here, but you understand what I mean, until the spacecraft is able to reach Tiangong.
Well, you can back me up if anything goes, I say this wrong. So it will lift off, and then I think the escape tower goes away at 120 seconds, and then the boosters come off, and then the second stage engine will ignite and push away the first stage engine. So this is the kind of technology used for this particular rocket. For the later on ones, you would separate them first and then ignite the engines. That's why you have those openings on the side of the rocket for flames to go out. And then the second stage engine will burn for something like 300 seconds, and then a bit more with the auxiliary engines. And then at this stage, I think, if I remember correctly, will be the fairing coming off, and then they will be able to talk to ground. The astronauts will be exposed.
What sort of timing are we looking at then, for when they're able to communicate, and for the space shuttle to be exposed, for the fairing to be shed?
Several hundred.
Is that something that we can sort of estimate? Several minutes after liftoff, or what sort of time scale?
That during the whole launch process, we always have the radio connections between the ground stations and the helium data relay satellite to the launch vehicle. But you know that after the separation of the Shenzhou spaceship and the launch vehicle, the second stage, we must measure the orbital parameters to ensure that to judge whether it will be a successful launch. And we've already heard many times the voices between the commander and other ground stations. So the other ground stations will track the combination of the rocket and the Shenzhou spaceship, and also measure the trajectory.
Okay.
You're now watching the three astronauts in the cabin. From the left to right is Liu Yang and Commander Chen Dong.
And then a very critical step is for the solar panels to unfold, and then they can actually charge up their batteries and stuff to go on for the next stage. Once they're up there, I think the ground tracking, as Professor Yang mentioned, would upload the trajectory information onto the spacecraft, so they can go on chasing the Tiangong station and do their 6.5 hour journey there. I think more recently, the fact that Beidou came online has made it a lot easier for navigation. That's why part of the reason why they can do 6.5 hours short.
Until the point that the solar panel is open.
5 minutes to go.
It's T-minus 5 minutes and counting.
So until the solar panel is opened, I mean, that process could just, 10 minutes or so? Is that how long it could take?
That's the separation of the rocket and the spaceship is about 584 seconds after liftoff.
Down to the seconds. Right.
And after several seconds will be the unfolding of the solar panels.
Is there a particular stage that's considered especially, I suppose, more dangerous than others, more risky?
The most dangerous part will be the rocket flight, especially during the flight of the first stage, because you may heard that there is a word called max Q. So max Q usually happened several seconds after liftoff. So at this moment, there are the maximum aerodynamic forces act on the body of the rocket. That will be the most dangerous.
Seeing that the astronauts have put down their visors.
Yes.
So we're now in the 4 minutes.
Yeah, they're
less
ready
than 4 minutes to go.
The liftoff.
I wonder how much they must be feeling right now. I mean, they look the same as they did at the beginning. They look pretty calm,
they've been practiced for quite a long time, so I believe they're pretty calm. And also, well, though they will spend 6 months in a space, every day will have been very carefully planned by the ground staff and by the controlling center on the ground.
But scheduled based on Beijing time.
Yeah, the schedule is based on Beijing, but every detail of their working schedule has been planned. Has already been planned.
And also, it is very interesting that the Tianzhou 4 has already prepared food for them.
Just 3 minutes until the launch. Chen Zhong, Liu Yang, and Cai Shuzhe have completed their final checks, and they will stay in space for 6 months as part of the second phase of the mission to complete China's space station by the end of the year.
And you can see the rotational arms will be opened finally and unplug the cables.
Right. Coming up,
the orange arms.
The rocket would be heading to the China's Tianhe space station.
It's the 40-second mark now.
Arms are open.
30秒，30秒。
And you can really see how sparsely populated this area is and how important that is.
20秒，20秒。
We're now 20 seconds to go, and we're seeing this the commander is giving out the countdown.
10、
10,
9、
9,
8、
8,
7、
7,
6、
6,
5、
5,
4、
4,
3、
3,
2、
2,
1，
1,
点火，
lift off.
起飞，起飞，70，摇动时
Been
44
expecting
分
for the
摇动
entire
秒，
morning.
自动
Now we're seeing the launching and lift off. China's
power is
long march
70， 摇
2F.
动时44分摇动秒，
The Shenzhou-14
46毫秒。
spacecraft. The Tycoon nozzle seems very.
酒泉光学跟踪正常。
And now we're seeing is the rockets still leaving the Earth, heading to China Space Station.
And more announcements from the ground control saying
青
it's
山
normal.
ESB 雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
So the pitch over is already accomplished. It changes the direction from a vertical direction
双城
to
光
the
学 雷
east.
达跟踪
south.
正常。
Yeah, we're seeing from this the camera view that has been set up on the side of
东
the
风光
rocket.
学 USB
which
雷
is
达
living
跟
higher
踪正
and
常
higher.，
遥测信号正常
It's a，
东风
beautiful,
飞行正
beautiful
常。
rocket. And
Beautiful
today's
day for it.
weather is terrific.
So the next critical step will be the jettisoning of the emergency escape tower.
That could
All
happen
right.
any
About
second, right?
120
That's-
seconds.
That little pointy, that small rocket will finish its job.
Yeah.
And will be separated from the main rocket.
Honestly, I felt my heart rate go up there.
All Tychoon seems very calm, and
Great. This is infrared video.
they're not experiencing too much acceleration at this moment.
So you can see that both the vehicle and the flame is very bright. I believe.
Which part will be the hardest for those?
As I
Tychoons?
mentioned, just before the separation of the boosters, when
Okay.
it is transonic,
Oh,
it is transonic. The flow will be the most complex, and also the aerodynamic forces will be acting at the maximum level.
so now we're seeing the
Okay.
rockets changing
Soon we will
direction.
see the jettisoning.
Something
great.
just happened there.
酒
Oh,
泉
that
逃逸
is-
塔分离。
逃逸塔分离，
And the escape tower has been separated
It
from
is
this
already
rocket.
jettisoned.
Mhm.
So the next step will be the separation
青
of
山 ESB
boosters.
雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
So far, so good.
about
I mean, this it's very clear through the infrared image, isn't
at
it?
about 553
双城
minutes,
光
3
学
seconds.
雷达跟
I
踪
think
正
now
常
we're。seeing is,
东风光学 USB 雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常，东风飞行正常。
And we're hearing lots of the voices of all the various ground stations saying that the monitoring and everything
the
is
booster is
as
about to
normal.
separate.
酒泉
Okay,
主推器
now.
分离。
Booster
助推器
separated.
分离，
Wow. it's
酒泉
beautiful.
一二
This
级分离
is,
一二级分离。
the flame.
And the first stage is already separated.
Now the booster and a first stage rocket are separated.
So they made some changes to the separation process. It used to be just dropping down,
Mhm.
falling behind. Now they sort of push them out or
Oh.
just tie
Oh,
it.
this is a video mounted on the rear part of the second stage.
Mm.
So we can see that there is one main engine
Mhm.
with a thrust of about 80 tons,
Okay.
and also 4 vernier engines.
Mhm.
You can see the nozzle of the small vernier engines,
right.
which can change the direction to control the attitude.
So this is the second
酒
stage
泉
rocket that we're looking at
抛
now.
好，
the
流到
fairing,
Payload fairing is also
payload
separated.
fairing, it's about to separate it.
Okay. So we can see the folded solar
Right.
panels.
双城抛走铃罩。
Well, after the second stage rocket is ignited.
Yeah.
Now we're now seeing a separation of the fairing.
And that will leave the space shuttle
Um,
exposed.
and the fairing is what protects the spacecraft, and now this
青
is
山
whole spacecraft
ESB
is
跟踪正
now
常，
exposed
遥
to the
测信号
outside.
正常。
So the second stage will work for more than 400 seconds. And the
双
first
城光学雷达
So
跟
now
踪
will
正
be
常。
the hardest time for the astronauts.
no, it's
太
already
远了。
not the most.
They have
dangerous
already
part.
going through this
Yeah,
part.
yeah, because this moment is already come out of the dense atmosphere.
Mhm.
So what would they be feeling right now?
They will experience the vibration and the G forces.
Okay.
And that the thrust is almost the same, but because with the exhausting of the propellants, they will acting more and more of the G load on the body. And the maximum G load happen during the separations, because at that moment the thrust is big, but the mass is small. And during the flight of the second stage, we will first shut down the main engine. And the four vernier engine will work longer to adjust the trajectory precisely to ensure the accurate orbit of the Shenzhou.
So they've already passed the toughest moments, basically.
It's already past the most tough moments, because as I mentioned, when it is experience the max Q, it will be have the maximum aerodynamic forces. But now it's already almost in the vacuum condition.
Now it's just a matter of how accurate they inject into the orbit. That means how much fuel they spend when chasing the space station.
青山 USB 跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
The voice is just reported the tracking status of the certain ground stations.
光学雷达跟踪正常。
Again, more report back.
太原雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
Yes, it's reported that both optical cameras and the readers tracking very normally.
东风光学 USB 雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常，东风飞行正常。
You can see the background is the Earth, very bright.
Right.
It's because it is in daylight time.
And we're seeing the main engine is still working.
Yeah.
And what are we going to see next?
Well, the next, as I mentioned, will be the shutdown of the main engine.
Okay, the main engine will be shut down first.
Yeah.
And then will be the separation of the spacecraft and
after the vernier engine is also shutted. There are four vernier engines. So after the shutdown of the vernier engines, we will see the separation.
It's still
then we
reading
check out a
those
phase of
booklets
Shenzhou.
there.
Because they are already past the maximum G forces, so they are more relaxed now.
So I mean, it didn't last too long, did it? The
About as I mentioned, about near 10 minutes, 584 seconds.
I know. I mean, the worst part of feeling the G-force, the maximum G-force, that
So
wouldn't have
you
lasted
already
too
can
long.
see the blue bubble, the Earth, so beautiful.
青山 USB 跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
So it reported that the telemetry data is normal. We can get the detail of any technical parameter from the telemetry data.
I have no idea. I don't know if you have been checking on the internet. Yesterday, the China Space Authority has released a new set of the footages that's been filmed by the Shenzhou-14 crew. They took the pictures and the video.
The 8K, yeah.
That's the 8K high-resolution footages.
Oh, main engine is shut down.
Well, they'll be seeing it for themselves very soon. The Shenzhou-14 crew.
So are they using the they take the camera with them, or they use the camera on the space station to take all of those footages?
Both.
Both?
Yeah. The Cai Shizhe is still reading the handbook.
And
I wonder if it's also a way to calm any nerves that they may have, right? Something to distract them.
So they will experience the 0G after the shutdown of the vernier engines. I can still remember last time Miss Liu Yang is so exciting that she raised her pen.
And is that a stage that pen can float on? Can float on?
Yeah. After the shutdown of the vernier engine.
USB 雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
I mean, as composed as they may be, they must also be incredibly excited at this point. I mean, this is, it's a historic moment for them.
And especially for Tsai, I guess, that's his first time out.
Maiden
training.
But he's holding it together very well.
Yeah.
Because they have windows in the re-entry capsule, so after the jettisoning of the payload ferry, they can already begin to enjoy the scene outside the cabin.
太原雷达跟踪正常，
So I think that's an
遥测信
animation
号
down
正
at
常。
the bottom right of where the rocket is. what the space shuttle is.
Well, on the bottom
And I
right
can
of
see
the
the
screen,
solar
you can see
panel.
a 3D animation which represents the real status of the vehicle based on the telemetry data. So you can see that the 4 vernier engine is still working. It will adjust because the thruster is much smaller than the main engine, so it can adjust the trajectory very precisely. Great.
Separation.
All right, the separation is happening.
And a round of
As you can hear
applause.
the applause from the controlling room, and the spacecraft and the rocket has been separated.
They are already
Oh,
enjoying
it's
the
playing.
0G.
Playing with the fans now.
天津上行停发，
Oh yeah.
Now let's see they're playing with their pen.
Every time it's the new guy.
Mr. Cai Zhe is so excited.
Right? Every time it's a new guy.
天路发现目标，
Well, Mr. Tsai, enjoy your remaining voyage to the
长江
space.
3号双补完成。
Thank God for the new guy, others we wouldn't be seeing that, would we?
So the other 2 veterans is not so excited.
Right.
Oh, there's that pen.
So the pen is our 0G indicator.
Maybe that's a tradition as well.
北京入
Yeah.
轨指令链发出，
That's a spontaneous one.
So, Professor Yang, can we say this now Shenzhou 4 has entered this predetermined orbits
It's
now?
already into the orbit, but still needs to get the orbital parameters by the telemetry data, and also from the measurement from the ground tracking data. And we will combine all these data and analysis the exact orbit. And only with it's accurate enough, we can say that it is a successful launch.
Mm-hmm.
When will they be able to leave their seats and move about? Would that be one
After
stage?
the unfolding of the solar panels.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then they can open the hatch between the 2 modules and go into the orbiter module. And also they can take off their
天路
IBS
1号
spacesuit.
04型跟踪正常。
So now they're already on this orbit where
天路
the
跟踪正常。
space station is located.
It's in the same orbital plane, but in a different altitude.
Different
as
altitude.
As Professor Zhang has mentioned, actually speaking, their orbit, this initial orbit is lower than the station. Because according to the features of orbital dynamics, the lower it is, the faster it is rotating the Earth. So it is the chasing vehicle, chasing the space station.
So how long would this take to chase after the
As we discussed, about 6.5 hours.
6.5 hours?
北京帆板展开指令发出。
So the next
Right,
critical
this,
step will be the
The
unfolding of
solar
the
panel has opened. And we hear just the final announcement that the solar panel is opened, and we hear the applause at the launch center.
And that marks the successful launch, right?
北京明白。
The solar panels.
So that basically
太阳帆板展开。
It's a great image.
You can
so
see
now
this.
we can basically say it's a successful launch.
It's
太
successful.
阳帆板
Right.
驱动正常。
And now it's just
So now
waiting
it's
for
just
the
a-
final official announcement.
So this is the cruising stage,
That's
is it?
right.
As I mentioned, we should check the accuracy of the orbital parameters and then announce the success and see the big red screen.
And we should be able to hear from the astronauts themselves pretty soon, right? They should be coming onto the comms and communicating with the ground staff.
中继天线展开正常。
Oh, great. Also, the unfolding of the data relay antenna.
Yeah, so they will be able to say something now.
And we just heard a voice that they have already established the communication link with the Tianlian data relay satellite.
神舟14号，我是北京。
That means we can
It's
communicate with the
Beijing's
three
ground
astronauts.
staff just communicating just now.
通报座舱大气环境及身体状况。
We're about to hear
身体好的，
those reports.
And that's astronaut Liu Yang reporting back that she's in good condition.
好的。神舟14号报告，飞船座舱大气
长江3号跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
完毕。
That's fantastic.
Beijing
That's the voices of the astronauts there saying that they are all well.
In good condition.
Mm-hmm.
It's good things to hear.
It's actually the first time that we've heard from them since heard their voices.
Right.
Since before the launch.
Yeah. And if you're watching our special coverage for, if you're following our special coverage, you really hear about those terms in Chinese terms often, like the 感觉良好. It feels good.
I feel
we
good.
feel good. I feel good.
The ground commander asked them they can open their helmet now. It's already safe now.
Open the visors.
Yeah.
There we go.
It will be more comfortable.
And there.
So of course the visors were important to keep down the pressure, right?
Right. If they need the pressure, you need to keep it on your head as well.
There are pipes between their IVA spacesuit and the cabin, and it can not only provide the oxygen and also provide the ventilation and cooling. So the IVA spacesuit, that is the reason why it is much more simpler than the EVA spacesuit.
What sort of temperature would it be inside the capsule right now?
About 25 degrees. Very comfortable.
That's pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
If not, a bit hot for them, though.
And also we hear
what they're wearing.
the solar panel is working well right now.
我是北京，
It means the energy
根据北
supply
京
is
实时轨道
good.
与遥测数据监视判断，神舟14号飞船已进入近地点高度200公里，远地点高度360公里，倾角41.35度，周期约1小时30分钟的预定轨道。太阳帆板展开，飞船工况正常，航天员状态良好，后续工作按照正常飞控计划实施。
So there it is, the ground staff saying that the Shenzhou-14 has entered the planned orbit, the track.
Professor Yang, want to explain a little bit more about their flight condition that has just been reported by the control room?
The ground commander has already announced its orbital parameters.
Yes, that's
the
right.
perigee is about 200 kilometers, and the apogee is about 360 kilometers. As I mentioned, it's slower than our Tiangong space station, so it rotates faster. And the inclination means the angle between the orbital plane and the equator. It's 41.35 degrees. So that's the current parameter of our Tiangong space station. They are already in the same orbital plane. So because it is lower and it will chase the station one cycle by one cycle, become closer and closer, and finally dock to the nadir docking port of the station.
我是北京，东风请讲。下面请酒泉卫星发射中心主任、发射场区指挥部周立鹏指挥长宣布发射结果。
All right, the final announcement is coming.
北京明白，各号注意
We
收
will see
听。
the big red screen soon.
Let's check it out.
各位领导、专家、
Dear
同志们，
leaders, dear experts,
根据北京
fellow
航天飞
comrades,
行控制中心通报
according，to the observation of Beijing Aerospace
遥
Center,
14火箭已将
the
神舟
Long
14号
March
载人飞
2F
船准确送入
Y-14 rocket has sent the Shenzhou-14 spacecraft into the designated
神
orbit.
舟
The
14
solar
号
panel
载
has
人
been
飞船发射任务
deployed and the
取得圆满成功。
spacecraft is in good shape. The launch mission was a great success.
Look at that big red screen.
That must be a proud moment for everybody there, and a big relief.
That's right.
It keeps mentioning the screen. That's a tradition. It has to be this.
So they've now been.
Oh,
since
that's a big
liftoff,
relief
we're
for all of us ground controllers.
So the next step will be the automatic rendezvous performed by our Shenzhou spaceship. You know that during the early stages in our Shenzhou 8 to 10 missions, usually we will schedule that based on the ground. We will measure the orbit of the Shenzhou spaceships and then schedule the strategy for the orbit maneuver and then upload the link command from the ground. But today we are more advanced and practical. So today we can, based on the parameters measured by the vehicle itself, and then it will calculate the strategy for the orbit maneuver, and then do that orbit maneuver. So today we can greatly reduce the burdens of the ground staff and conduct the orbit maneuver more precisely and automatically. And then with only 6 hours, we approach the station and then dock with it.
So what happens in the next 6 hours for these astronauts? What do?
They can basically relax and review read that book again on how they open up into the. There are 4 hatches. 4 hatches they need to open very carefully because, in particular, the one connecting the orbital module, and when it docks onto the